Personality is the sum of who you are. It consists of your attitude and reactions, both physical and emotional, and it's what makes each person different. There are four main theories of personality, which are the psychodynamic perspective, the behaviorist perspective, the humanistic perspective, and the trait perspective. The psychodynamic perspective began with the work of Sigmund Freud. It analyzes how personality is developed from the unconscious mind, and it focuses on biological factors. The behaviorist perspective, on the other hand, focuses on the role of environmental factors that affect behavior. The humanistic perspective goes against the psychoanalytic and behaviorist perspectives. This perspective focuses on a person's experiences and choices in the development of personality. And lastly, the trait perspective differs from the other three perspectives as it seeks out the characteristics.
Maslow and Rogers believe that human beings always strive to fulfill their innate capacities and capabilities and to become everything that their genetic potential will allow them to become. Self-actualizing tendency is the striving for fulfillment. Self-concept, which is a perspective by Carl Rogers, is an important tool in human self-actualization. There are two important components of the self-concept: the real self and the ideal self. The real self is one's actual perception of characteristics, traits, and abilities that form the basis of striving for self-actualization. Ideal self is the perception of what one should or would like to be. Gordon Allport was one of the first to attempt to form a list of traits that make up one's personality. He and H.S. Odbert worked together and scanned through the dictionary, looking for any word that could be a trait. Raymond Cattell is credited with defining two different traits: surface traits and source traits. Surface traits are quite like those Allport found. They represent the characteristics of an individual's personality which are easily seen by others, hence the word surface. Source traits, on the other hand, are traits that are more basic and underlie the surface traits. An example of the difference between surface traits and source traits would be the case of introverts. Shyness, being quiet, and a dislike for crowds are examples of surface traits. In this case, introversion, which is defined as a tendency to withdraw from excessive stimulation, would be the underlying trait, also known as the source trait. Factor analysis is a statistical technique that groups numerical data according to commonalities. Cattell used this to identify 16 source traits, despite the fact that he later discovered an additional 7 traits, which brought his total number of source traits up to 23. He came up with an assessment questionnaire using the original 16 traits he identified. The 16 personality factor, or the 16PF questionnaire, was created by Cattell based on the original 16 source traits he identified. The questionnaire is put together in such a way that opposite traits are positioned on different ends with a range of possible degrees for each trait in between each dimension. An example would be if an individual's personality scored closer to the reserved section of the reserved outgoing dimension of the questionnaire, they are most likely more introverted than someone whose score would have fallen in the middle or the opposite end of the spectrum. The Big Five originally had 16 factors. However, researchers attempted to reduce the number to 5. The Big Five, which can also be remembered with its acronym OCEAN, represents the core description of human personality. The O in OCEAN represents openness, or a person's willingness to try new things and be more open to new experiences. The C in OCEAN is conscientiousness, a person's organization and motivation. The E in OCEAN is extroversion, a term that was first used by Carl Jung in 1933, who believed that people could be divided into two personality types, which were extroverts and introverts. The A in OCEAN is agreeableness, which refers to a person's basic emotional style. And lastly, the N in OCEAN is neuroticism, which is an individual's emotional instability or stability.
Dimensions of cultural personality. There are 4 basic dimensions of cultural personality. The first is individualism or collectivism. Individuals in individualistic cultures tend to look out for themselves and their families only. They have loose ties with other individuals in the society and are part of many loosely organized social groups. Individuals in collectivist cultures have close and deep ties with their extended families and few permanent groups. The second is power distance. This refers to the degree of expectation and acceptance of low-ranking individuals that power is not equally distributed in the society. The third is masculinity and femininity. Masculine cultures are assertive and competitive, while feminine cultures are more modest and caring. In masculine cultures, the females are not as assertive and competitive as men, while in feminine cultures, the males and females share almost the same values. The last is uncertainty avoidance. Cultures that do not tolerate uncertainty have strict rules and are not open to different opinions. They tend to lean to only one truth. Cultures that are tolerant to uncertainty are more accepting and tolerant of different views, religions, and opinions.
There are different methods for assessing and measuring personality, which vary according to the theory of personality used to develop those methods. The first is interviews. An interview is when the therapist asks questions and note down the answers in a survey process. Unlike a job interview, this is likely to be unstructured. They tend to flow naturally from beginning dialogue to end. When psychologists interview clients, clients must report on their innermost feelings, urges, and concerns, all things that only they can directly know. Another assessment of personality is projective tests. Projective tests use ambiguous visual stimuli where psychoanalysts would ask their client what they could see. One projective test is the Rorschach ink blot test. People being tested are asked to look at each ink blot and simply say whatever it might look like to them. Another projective test is the Draw a Person or House Tree Person, in which the client is asked to draw the named items. A problem of projective tests is that they're very subjective in nature. Interpreting the answers of the clients is almost an art. It is certainly not a science and it is not known for its accuracy. Problems lie in the areas of reliability and validity. Another assessment of personality is the behavioral assessments. The preferred method for a behaviorist would be to watch the behavior of a person unfold in the real world.
Behaviorists would assume that the personality of a person is learned through the stimuli from the environment. Direct observation is when the psychologist watches the client engaging in ordinary, everyday behavior, for example, in the natural setting of home, school, or workplace.